The second aspect of poetry, according to the Poetry Foundation, is a poem is an emotional expression including but not limited to loss or love. Think of your favorite poem. Was it about love? Was it about loss? If it went about love or loss, was it about another very strong emotion? These are retrospective questions. I want you to think about them, and I'm not necessarily looking for an answer to them, but I want you to think about the issues that I'm bringing up, the issues that are being raised. Thirdly, a poem is a purposeful gathering of literary techniques. Let's stop for a minute. Pause. What are literary techniques? Do you also know them as literary devices? So, the definition that we have got is that when you're writing a poem, you deliberately bring together literary devices. You use them, don't they, in your poem? Literary devices might include visual, what you say, imagery. A lot of poems use visual imagery, but you could also use sonic, auditory, tactile imagery. So we want to hear sounds as well. Some poets use assonance, alliteration, repetition. Umar Farouk likes the use of these techniques, particularly repetition and alliteration. And some poems are figurative. They are a metaphor. The poet is comparing himself to something which is not. And then some of the poems use similes. Pamilerin Jacob's poems are metaphorical. What does that mean? So I wanted to look at how to write poetry by focusing on Pamilerin's work. I'm going to use 3 of his poems to illustrate what I mean. Let me tell you what I'm going to be discussing. The first aspect I want to talk about is narrative. Narrative. Let me tell you a joke. I was at a session and this lady was reading her poem. She started with the first person narrative. I, in the first stanza, I. Without warning, she's gone on to the first person plural we. Where did that spring from? In Pamilerin's poems, he uses the first person narrative. Remember the definition of what a poem is? Let me tell you, the poems that work use the first person narrative. I like to see you bringing yourself into the poem because poems usually talk about your personal experiences and your feelings. We all like the I and the me and the my in poetry. Isn't that what we say? So narrative can be first person, I, plural we. Second person, you plus one. Third person, he, she, it. Third person, plural, they. Whatever narrative you choose, it's up to yourself. The strongest poems are written in the first person narrative. I also want to look at another aspect of postmodern literature. I don't have a PhD in postmodern literature. Disclaimer, I read a lot. Yeah. I've got a basic degree in English, and in my latter years, I focused on criminology and social policy. So ask me about criminal law. But I've also done English. I've also done TOEFL courses. I don't have a PhD in literature, disclaimer, but I have a basic degree in English. I know that my area of expertise was criminology and social policy. Disclaimer. But from observation and from reading, I see that in postmodern poetry, writers experiment with form. What's form? Is it structure? Is it how the poem looks, what it's made up of? Pamilerin's poems have his own unique form. Form is essential to what the poet is saying, because it might be that it reflects his state of mind. Some poets, like Pamilerin, also use structure to enhance their theme. What do his stanzas look like? How about his line formation, line breaks? How does it structure the poem? How does it look on the page? Form. So narrative, form. The third aspect I'm going to be looking at is theme. This is what I follow with people. In my humble opinion, and my poems that get published, I only talk about one thing. It may well be that in your countries, when you have a poem, it's a salad. I want to show you that in Pamilerin's poems today, we don't have a salad. We have one theme. A theme could be like a capsule. When you open it, what's in it? The other ingredients inside. But at the end of the day, it's still a capsule. So he opens up the capsule and the different other elements that he's going to talk about, aspects. But his theme in the poem is going to be one thing, and I'll demonstrate that and evidence it in a minute. I'm going to look at narrative, form, theme. And then language is the last thing that I'm going to look at. I'm not saying English language. I'm not saying he writes in Yoruba. I'm not saying he writes in Pidgin English. Pardon me. By language, I meant choice of words. Don't forget that the definition is that you deliberately use literary devices, one of which is your language choice, to say something. So what words has he selected? Were there other words he could have used? Why did he use those words? He has to have a reason why he chose those words. What does the language sound like? In literature, we talk about how do we describe language? Is it dense? In this second half of the video, I want us to focus on Pamilerin's themes. A major theme in Pamilerin's work is a mental disorder. There, you got it on the screen. And think of that as a capsule. So the theme is going to be a capsule, and we're going to open it up and see what ingredients are in the capsule. So in the capsule of a mental illness, we would have references to depression, his mood, his state of mind. There won't be explicit references. There'll be where he's written the lines or the words that he's employed. So I said that poets deal with one theme in the poem, although there might be sub-themes as well. Let's look at the poem on the screen, which is titled Joyful Mystery 01, the Annunciation Today, the monochrome TV fell off the wall. I'm looking at the word annunciation, and it looks like a made-up word. It comes from numbness and annunciation. The annunciation is an announcement, isn't it? Numbness,
the feeling of being numb. Are those the two words that the poet has blended? Straight away, by reading the title, we sort of get an idea of what the poem is going to be about. Let's listen to the poem. So we have to read the title as if it is part of the body of the poem. The Annunciation today, the monochrome TV fell off the wall, like a roach swatted, and the grey pulled out. So a roach is shortened for a cockroach. What is that a synonym for? Cockroach. Where do you have cockroaches? Think about that. And why is it grey? What does grey represent? And how does that tie in with the poet's theme? Like a roach swatted, and all the grey poured out onto the log for me. A skull split open, memorizing air and the silence it holds. Oh wow. Have a think about that. How do you memorize air? What's in air that you have to commit to memory? And how is air silent? Let's carry on. Presenter had laughed too hard, had colours in his teeth, had broken a proverb or two. Is that why the TV broke, do you reckon? Is that why it fell off the wall? But what is he talking about? Who is this presenter? And an angel leapt out to warn him, woe unto you, woe unto you. He didn't even have the chance to finish the line, did he? Who is the angel? What do angels represent? Grey pouring from a skull, split open by an angel meant to deliver good news. Is that the Annunciation? What good news is he going to be told today? Do you reckon he's going to be discharged? Is he going to be told that he's better? I don't know whether he wrote this poem in a mental health unit or when he got discharged, but the setting that sprang to mind was maybe he was in a mental health unit and maybe the TV was stuck to the wall and that's the TV that fell off. And the next stanza is in italics because they are words that were spoken by the angel. Say, blessed are you among mad men. Say, the numbness behind your eyes is pain's prelude. So the numbness there, think again of the general theme of a mental illness, this feeling of being numb. And the reference here to a mental disorder. And pain's prelude, what came before the pain was numbness. And don't forget the title of the book is Gospels of Depression. But poets might use words that refer back to what they mean. A lot of you like writing about mental illnesses and some of you have not even actually experienced it the way Pamilerin has. Or the way Pimbo has. So I get sent a lot of poems with words like depression and I'm like, this young person hasn't actually experienced real depression, because you would write like Pamilerin has, make references to your mood, what's happening in your heart, in your head, and use symbolism like the angel and the presenter and the log. So what do they symbolize in the poem?